I think you could relate the story behind the book to contemporary Sri Lanka in at least a couple different ways. One is that even though Sri Lanka has been independent from colonial rule, in the case, the last colonial ruler was Great Britain in 1948, there's still a very vivid living memory of what colonialism was like in the island. And there's still a great deal of hostility, to be honest, among many Sri Lankans toward the different European powers who colonized the island and made money off its natural resources. And in the process sort of overturned some of the traditional cultural institutions, the kingship. They made the Buddhist monks more marginal rather than central in their culture. And so there's a great deal of resentment towards this colonial history. And so my book is dealing with the earliest part in this long, nearly 500-year colonial history in Sri Lanka. And I don't try to, in a sense, sugarcoat the experience of having Portuguese rulers in Sri Lanka, but I do try to bring out the more complex reaction that a local Buddhist elite, like a poet, Alagiyavana, had in response to this European intrusion. And so in some ways it is an early example of how difficult it is for people who live in a small island to interact with the larger world. Mm-hmm. So issues that have to do with globalization, diplomacy, all of these things that are still very real in Sri Lanka today. We see some early echoes of that in the story of Alagiyavana. And there's also some controversy over the current president in Sri Lanka, who some people laud as a great hero, who defeated a separatist rebellion a couple years back. Right. And so he can be praised in the same manner that the poet praised earlier kings. Mm-hmm. But some other people criticize him and see him as having taken too much power. And so there's, again, a real conflict over how one relates to those people who lead and who govern the country. One interesting aspect of the book is that it's very interdisciplinary in nature. I am a professor in religious studies, and I specialize in Buddhism, but this book is as much about history and literature as it is about the Buddhist religion. And so I think it speaks perhaps to a broader array of interests as well as disciplines. Mm-hmm. And that was done intentionally on my part to try and do something new, try to challenge myself, mm-hmm. and hopefully try and attract people with broad interests that aren't limited only to Buddhism, to learning about this interesting chapter in history.